Let me tell you something the media won't say. Iran is not weak. Iran is not broken. Iran is not afraid. It's the one nation the West couldn't tame, and that's what terrifies them. You don't fear a barking dog. You fear the quiet one that never backs down. While America was flexing money and missiles, Iran was building something far more dangerous. Patience, purpose, power, and Trump knew it. That's why he tried to strike first. That's why he panicked. Because deep down, every empire fears the man who won't kneel. And Iran kneels to no one. They sanctioned them. They isolated them. They painted them as monsters. But guess what? Monsters survive. They adapt. They evolve. They don't break. They grow fangs. America wanted surrender. Iran gave them silence, and silence is terrifying when it comes from a country that's been pushed to the edge. You think threats work on people who have already lost everything. You think fear works on men who pray for martyrdom. You're playing poker with a man who's not bluffing. That's not courage, that's conviction. And conviction crushes comfort every time. Trump bombed, Iran buried, then Iran built. No cries, no begging, just silence and strategy. Because Iran knows the truth. If they come for your blood, give them war. That's top G energy. That's how real power moves. You want to win in life, learn from this. Don't cry when they try to break you. Don't beg when they threaten to silence you. Stand your ground, build in silence, and when the time comes, strike without warning. That's how nations win. That's how men win. That's how you win. The West fears Iran not because of what it has, but because of what it refuses to give up. Its identity, its defiance, its soul, and that's the most dangerous kind of power. Unshakable belief, ruthless patience, a refusal to kneel. That's Iran, and that's exactly why Trump couldn't sleep at night. The game changed, expanded to 500 words in Andrew Tate voice. You thought Iran was just dessert and oil. That's the narrative they sold you, that it's some backward, outdated relic stuck in the past. But you were wrong. Iran is not just a country. It's a machine, a calculated, methodical, ruthless machine. It doesn't move fast, it moves right. Every step it takes is designed for the long game. You think power comes from looking strong on camera, from military parades and photo ops. No. Real power is quiet. Real power is built when nobody's watching, and Iran has been building in silence. They got crushed. They got sanctioned. They were demonized by every Western media outlet on Earth, labeled terrorists, isolated from the world. But did they collapse? No. They adapted. They pivoted. They did what strong people do when the world turns against them. They endured, because strength isn't loud. Strength isn't tweets and slogans. Strength is surviving every hit and still moving forward with your eyes locked on the target. You don't fear a country that falls. You fear a country that refuses to stay down. That's Iran. That's what the West doesn't want to admit. They thought sanctions would kill them. Instead, it bred innovation. They thought isolation would break them. It made them self-reliant. They tried to suffocate Iran economically, but what they created was a country that learned to breathe without permission. You think a man becomes dangerous because he's armed. No. A man becomes dangerous when he's calm under pressure, when he's been starved, hunted, targeted, and yet still holds his ground. That's what Iran represents on a global scale. An entire nation that became more dangerous because it was challenged, not less. And now the game has changed, because the West isn't dealing with a desperate regime anymore. They're dealing with a calculated adversary. Someone who's been punched so many times, they stopped flinching. Someone who's seen enough betrayal, enough lies, enough manipulation, that they don't react emotionally. They respond strategically. This isn't about missiles. This isn't about oil. This is about mindset. The Iranian mindset is rooted in something the West can't control: legacy, faith, honor, When you fight for profit and your enemy fights for purpose, you lose. When you threaten comfort and your enemy embraces suffering, you lose. Iran's power isn't in its weapons. It's in its refusal to submit. Its refusal to forget. Its refusal to be anyone's pawn, and America knows it. That's why they watch. That's why they talk tough but act cautious. Because deep down they know Iran isn't a target anymore. It's a variable, a wild card. A nation that plays by different rules, with different values and an unshakable will. The game isn't played on a chessboard anymore. It's being played in silence, in deserts, in labs, in war rooms, and the next move won't be announced, it'll be executed. Quietly, brutally, without warning. And the world won't be ready, but Iran will. Trump, he couldn't sleep at night knowing Iran was still in the game, and that's not just politics. That's fear. That's the kind of sleepless anxiety that comes when you know your opponent isn't playing by your rules. Because real power doesn't scream. Real power doesn't flash lights and wave flags. Real power moves in silence, waits in patience, and strikes with precision. It's not something you show off. It's something you execute. While the West was caught up in media distractions, in identity politics, in endless debates over nonsense, Iran was focused on one thing: becoming untouchable. And untouchable isn't about how many friends you have on paper. It's about how much chaos you can create if someone pushes the wrong button. That's deterrence. That's power. That's what Iran was building. Not for show, but for survival. You think they care about headlines? They don't. They care about capability. While America was putting on parades and patting itself on the back for its progressive values, Iran was stacking weapons, drilling soldiers, and expanding influence across every border. Quietly, relentlessly, not to impress the world, but to prepare for war, because they understand something the West forgot. Peace is a luxury only the strong can afford, and strength is bought in blood, in patience, and in cold calculation. Iran isn't trying to look good. They're trying to last, and that's a different game. That's not optics. That's not PR. That's war strategy. You don't broadcast your power if you're serious. You don't make noise. You make moves. And Iran has mastered that. While the West was spending billions on distractions, Iran invested in discipline. While America was arguing about who could use which bathroom, Iran was creating alliances, training proxies, and building an arsenal that could shake the region. Discipline, defiance, deterrence, these aren't buzzwords for them. These are principles, ways of life, tools of survival. They've lived under pressure for decades, sanctions, threats, assassinations. But they adapted. That's what strong organisms do, and now their silence isn't weakness. It's warning, a quiet storm gathering force. Iran doesn't shout because it doesn't have to. Their enemies know what they're capable of. That's why Trump didn't bomb more. That's why every U.S. president after 2003 had to tiptoe around them, because one wrong move could ignite something that won't stop. A fire that spreads, a war that nobody wins. And that's not weakness, that's power, the kind of power that keeps even the strongest nations up at night. They're not fighting to dominate the world. They're fighting to never be dominated again. That's more dangerous than any ambition. Because when someone has nothing left to prove, but everything to protect, they become the ultimate opponent, quiet, deadly, calculated. That's Iran, and that's why they're still standing. That's why they're winning. The U.S. tried to starve Iran into submission. They thought if you choke a nation's economy, you choke its will. They believed that if you isolate a people long enough, they'll beg to be accepted, but Iran doesn't beg. Iran bites. Sanctions were supposed to be the knockout punch. No medicine, no parts, no trade, no dollars. It was designed to make the nation collapse from within, to crush morale, to turn the people against their leaders. But it didn't work because the people didn't break. They adapted, they endured, they evolved. That's what the West never understood. Pain doesn't always kill. Sometimes pain sharpens, and in Iran's case, pain created precision. Pain made them ruthless. Pain turned them into masters of survival. You see, when you take away comfort, you create clarity. When a nation has no lifeline, no support system, no international sympathy, it learns to rely on itself. It learns to build without help. It learns to fight without permission. That's not weakness. That's savage strength. That's self-reliance weaponized. While the world was watching for signs of collapse, Iran was recalibrating. They were turning engineers into weaponsmiths. They were turning trade routes into smuggling corridors. They were turning children into soldiers of ideology, and all of it, every ounce of struggle, was turning them into a fortress. Because when you starve someone and they don't die, they stop fearing hunger. When you attack someone and they keep getting back up, they stop fearing pain. Iran is now a nation that fears nothing, because it has already endured everything. The West thought that cutting them off would cripple them, but all it did was remove the distractions. Now Iran doesn't chase profit. It chases purpose. Now Iran doesn't play by global rules. It writes its own. And a country that's forged in pressure, stripped of comfort, and driven by revenge, that's not a state, that's a weapon. You think comfort builds greatness? No. Comfort builds entitlement. Struggle builds savages. Hardship carves warriors out of weak men. And Iran is the result of decades of unrelenting hardship. They turned every sanction into strategy, every restriction into resistance. They became immune to pressure because pressure became their environment. So, while the world kept tightening the leash, Iran grew teeth. While everyone waited for them to collapse, they were preparing for war. Not just the kind fought with guns, but the war of endurance, the war of attrition, the war of identity. Now the world looks at them and sees a threat, because they know that what was supposed to destroy them ended up refining them, and what you're left with is a savage, sharpened by pain, unshaken by pressure, and completely unwilling to kneel. They tried to break Iran, but they built a beast. America plays chess for profit. Every move calculated not for meaning, but for margin. Every war, every alliance, every sanction. It's all business. Control the oil. Control the narrative. Control the outcome. That's the West's mindset. That's how empires play, with arrogance, with greed, with the assumption that everyone has a price. But Iran doesn't play for profit. Iran plays for something far more dangerous, survival. You see, when your history is soaked in invasion, betrayal, and martyrdom, you stop seeing life the same way. You don't move pieces on a board to win a game. You move to make sure you're never a pawn again. Iran has been in survival mode for over 4 decades, and when someone's fighting to survive, they don't bluff. They don't hesitate. They commit completely. That's the problem the West never solved. They assume everyone wants what they want. Money, recognition, influence, but Iran doesn't move for dollars. It moves for legacy, for ideology, for God, for vengeance. You can't buy that. You can't bargain with it, and you definitely can't intimidate it. When your enemy is ready to die for his beliefs and you're still negotiating profits, you've already lost. Iran doesn't want to be liked. It wants to be remembered, and that's more dangerous than ambition, because ambition can be redirected. Purpose cannot. The Iranian mindset has been forged in centuries of spiritual warfare, colonial wounds, and generational memory. The West forgets everything. Iran forgets nothing. They remember the coups. They remember the assassinations. They remember the lies, the deals broken, the leaders killed. That memory is fuel. And when that fuel burns behind religion, honor, and revenge, it becomes unstoppable. You're not dealing with a state. You're dealing with a spirit. A people who believe they were chosen to endure, who see every loss as a test, every hardship as a calling, every enemy as prophecy. That's what makes Iran terrifying to empires. Because it doesn't fear collapse, it embraces it if it leads to resurrection. And when you face a people who'd rather die on their feet than live on their knees, you're already cornered. You can have all the drones, all the satellites, all the economic power in the world. It doesn't matter, because when the enemy is driven by destiny, your numbers mean nothing, and that's the truth no one in Washington wants to admit. That Iran can't be controlled, not because it's too strong, but because it's too committed. Its foundation isn't oil, it's ideology. It's not about wealth, it's about will. And if someone's willing to die for something bigger than themselves, they've already beaten someone who lives only for himself. America plays to win. Iran plays so it can never lose again. That's a different kind of war. That's not chess. That's sacrifice. That's purpose. That's the kind of force that shakes empires and rewrites history. Trump bombed their generals, assassinated Qasem Soleimani, the architect of Iran's regional power, the symbol of their defiance, their blade in the shadows. The world thought Iran would fall apart, panic, maybe even surrender. But what did Iran do? They buried their dead with honor and doubled down with rage. That alone tells you everything you need to know. Iran doesn't fold under pressure. It sharpens, it evolves, it absorbs the hit, calculates the next move, and returns with fire in its eyes. That's not a nation on its knees. That's a lion crouching before it pounces. See, America moves with spectacle. It loves quick wins, shock and awe, drone strikes broadcasted like Hollywood trailers. Instant gratification is their addiction. But Iran isn't addicted to speed. Iran is addicted to legacy. It doesn't care how long it takes. It only cares that it finishes the job. That's why it's terrifying. Because when a nation plays the long game, fueled by memory, revenge, and belief, it becomes unpredictable. And unpredictability is the most dangerous weapon in war. Iran is like a lion in the desert. You don't see it coming. It doesn't roar until it's too late. While you sleep, it's moving. While you celebrate, it's waiting. While you think you've won, it's already planned its next move. The lion doesn't chase, it stalks. It doesn't waste energy. It strikes with purpose. That's Iran. Strategic, calculated, patient, and in war, patience isn't weakness. It's dominance. The assassination of their general wasn't a deterrent. It was an ignition switch. Instead of fear, they summoned fury. Instead of retreating, they expanded. Across Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, Yemen, Iran's influence grew deeper. You cut off one head and 10 others rise. That's the nature of a hydra. That's the nature of an enemy driven not by pride, but by pain. America thought it delivered a knockout, but Iran turned it into a rallying cry. The lion doesn't care about your applause. It doesn't need approval to exist. It just watches, waits, and when the time is right, it devours. That's what America can't fight against. An enemy that doesn't react emotionally, but responds with generational memory. One that isn't trying to win a news cycle, but a century. You don't defeat that with bombs. You don't silence that with sanctions, because lions aren't scared of storms. They are the storm. Iran doesn't need to look strong. It just needs to remain standing. Every time the West has tried to bury it, it's come back harder. Every strike has been answered with strategy. Every threat has been answered with silence, then retaliation. That's not recklessness. That's mastery, and mastery is what turns a small desert nation into a global nightmare for empires. Because in this world, the most terrifying enemy isn't the loudest one. It's the one who suffers, waits, builds, and never forgets. That's Iran, the lion in the desert, and it's not done hunting. You want to win in life. Study Iran, not because of politics, not because of religion, but because Iran is the perfect blueprint for how to survive in a world designed to break you. Everyone hated them, everyone tried to isolate them, everyone wrote them off, and they still rose. That alone should tell you everything you need to know about power, patience, and persistence. Iran didn't win by being loved, it won by being relentless, and in this world, being liked is a luxury, but being respected is a necessity. Respect doesn't come from weakness. It doesn't come from asking for help. It comes from refusing to stay down when you're on your back and the world's foot is on your neck. Iran was counted out again and again, and every time it rose smarter, it rose faster, it rose deadlier. That's not luck. That's calculated growth under pressure. You want to know how to win when everything's stacked against you? Look at how Iran turned pain into power. Sanctions didn't break them. They built their own systems. Isolation didn't kill them. They became self-sufficient. Assassinations didn't weaken them. They multiplied their influence. Why? Because they don't play victim. They play long-term strategy, and that's exactly what most people lack. Strategy. You think life's about quick wins, likes, applause. Iran teaches you that true power comes from silence and staying in the fight long after your enemies think you're finished. They didn't talk. They acted. They didn't cry. They calculated. You want to be dangerous in this life, become a problem that doesn't go away. That's what Iran became, a thorn in the side of global empires. Not by screaming, not by begging, but by never quitting. And here's the lesson you need to tattoo into your mind. Be feared not because you're loud, but because you refuse to fold. That's where the top G mentality is born. In resistance, in resilience, in mastering the art of not quitting, no matter what. That's the Iranian blueprint. That's what makes you invincible, not money, not fame, but the refusal to die quietly. Most people collapse at the first sign of resistance. Iran leaned into it. Most people seek comfort. Iran used discomfort as fuel. Most people look for shortcuts. Iran took the hardest road and built weapons from the struggle. That's life strategy. That's how warriors are made, not in comfort, but in chaos. The world will always try to crush you. It'll throw everything at you: failure, hate, loss, betrayal. But your job is simple. Don't go away. Stay in the fight. Get smarter with every blow. Get colder with every betrayal. Get stronger with every setback. That's how you become a force. That's how you go from a nobody to a name they fear. That's how you dominate life. Iran doesn't win because it's the richest or the most liked. It wins because it refuses to lose. And if you carry that energy, if you take that same principle into your own life, you become unstoppable. That's not politics. That's power. That's how empires are born. That's how warriors rise. And that's what makes you top G.